The time after the Morrison government's re-election can be divided in two: before COVID and after the disease. There was a clear enough agenda in the times BC. Focus was to be on congestion-busting bureaucratic and regulatory bottlenecks. The Disability and Aged Care Royal Commissions would identify improvements in these sectors. Retirement income policy was to be reviewed. Climate policy differences within government were to be managed, as were other social issues, including Aboriginal constitutional recognition and freedom of religious speech. And of course, the budget was going to be back in black. But that was BC. In 2020, first the bushfires came. And then the virus. Now the country is 80. Money has to be found for JobKeeper and JobSeeker, whilst the need to improve productivity has also been identified. Since May, the government has unveiled a number of new productivity ideas and changes to the administrative structure of the Federation to assist the post-bushfire COVID recovery. The new National Skills Commission will now provide detailed labour market analysis, with VET to be funded on a national efficient pricing and activity-based model. 5 working groups are examining industrial relations. The National COVID Coordination Commission is encouraging an industry policy that builds a competitive, best-in-class manufacturing sector as a major pillar in helping rebuild the economy. Finally, changes to the environmental laws are being proposed to reduce the red tape involved with development applications. As the National Cabinet concentrates on job creation, the Council on Federal Financial Relations will be tasked to rationalise Commonwealth and state financial agreements, as well as advancing tax, deregulation and housing reforms, whilst the National Federation Reform Council will deal with priority National Federation issues. This is what the system looks like as a whole. The proposed new structure needs to be calibrated properly. As you can see from the graphic, there's still a lot of moving parts, irrespective of whether a consolidation and reset of ministerial councils and forums is actually achieved. In our view, one thing that must change is the very bureaucratic process set out in this book, which significantly delegates powers such as programming agendas to senior officers. It is this structure that has led to the inertia that leads people like the Prime Minister to say that COAG is a place where good ideas go to die. More generally, the questions that will need to be resolved include: what is the precise mission statement of National Cabinet? Or is it just a glorified Premier's Conference of old? What is the mission statement of the National Cabinet Reform Committees and the Consolidated and Reset Ministerial Forums? Do the Reset Councils or Forums report to the Cabinet Reform Committees? Or will things operate just like the old COAG structure did? Finally, how is progress to be measured? Perhaps we'll find out more once the Conran Review on former councils and ministerial forums reports in September. The Council on Federal Financial Relations has a lot of heavy lifting to do under the new National Federation reform structure. Not only does it have to revise and rationalise national partnership agreements, it's responsible for tax and regulatory reform. This is a big exercise. It is therefore important to understand how the Treasurers will gain outside advice to test whether their proposed reforms will work. This is because Treasuries may not have a full understanding of the industry that they're looking at. And if that's the case, the changes to the law may not be as good as they could have been. For example, an attempt to bring about a national scheme of regulation for specified occupations fell over in 2013. A main reason was that those in charge of the reform had little understanding of the policy area and were trying to do too much too quickly. The 2020 occupational licensing reform is to provide automatic recognition of qualifications. Something to watch over time is whether there will be another effort for national occupational licensing regulation, and if there is, who will drive it? A National Cabinet Reform Committee, a consolidated and reset ministerial group, or the Treasurers? This will be a question posed in every area of reform. It is therefore important a program setting out what is going to be discussed and when should be published as soon as possible. Finally, taxation reform could be a slow-moving beast, as there is currently little agreement between jurisdictions. Between the contents of the Henry Report, as well as the Rethink Tax discussion paper, most of the available options for tax reform have been well and truly canvassed. The question now is whether there is the volition for reform. So it will be interesting to see how much reform will flow from the same people who have been examining the same issue for a number of years. Finally, former Western Australian Premier Colin Barnett recently made these observations. The jury is out as to whether reform will be achieved as the horrors of bushfires and COVID slowly but surely move into the rear vision mirror. The Abbott government's reform of the Federation fizzled after the publication of one green paper. So only time will tell as to whether there is the genuine will to renew the country's administrative structure in a way that will improve the productivity of the economy. The things discussed in this video are explored in greater detail on the blog at www.kmcork.com.au.